Hello, I'm Martin Starke, and welcome to the latest edition of the Total Saints podcast. This is our weekly get-together with some Saints experts to discuss all things Southampton Football Club. As always, we're streaming this live on our Facebook, our YouTube, our Twitter, and our Twitch. And if you're watching along live tonight, you can leave your comments as we go. A massive thank you, as always, to our TSP patrons. And remember, anybody who joins our Francis Benali or Mick Shannon tiers before the end of August will land themselves an exclusive TSP t-shirt. You can find out more. It's patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. Now, as mentioned last week, we're doing shout-outs for anyone who leaves us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, and a huge shout-out to everybody who's done that. Here's the names for you. Saint Cookie, Pinhead Saint, Alex Dobbins, Gio Baker, Mac Letizier, The Boy Cook, Matt at Traytech, Peter Brum, Kev B, Ashley Out Now, Walton 9083, Jelly Burr, and Ed 120 VTS. Matt Elgar also left us a review, and he said, I love this podcast, especially after a big win. So Matt's going to be a bit disappointed this week. And Rich says, I love listening on my Monday morning drive to work. So thank you for your comments. Anybody who leaves us a decent review and a rating for this week will get a shout out next week. So head to Apple Podcasts and find the Total Saints podcast and do your best. Now, coming up this week, we've got 2 to review and 2 to preview. There was the narrow home defeat to Manchester United in the Premier League, and our first ever game against Cambridge United in the League Cup. Plus, Chelsea visit St Mary's on Tuesday. That's an evening game ahead of a trip to Wolves at the weekend. Plus, the transfer window slams shut, of course, because it's the transfer window. That's on Wednesday, so we're going to be chatting about that as well. Let me introduce you to our panel for this week. Steve Grant is the owner of SaintsWeb. Glen de la Cour is the writer of the blog League One -10. And Jacob Tanswell is the Southampton FC reporter for The Athletic. Underpinned by our TSP patrons, this is episode 205 of the Total Saints podcast. Now, we start with a bit of sad news this week. Just after we finished recording last night, we got the news that former Saints midfielder David Armstrong had passed away at the age of 67. He was signed by Saints in 1981 and went on to play nearly 300 games, scoring 77 goals. I don't remember watching David Armstrong play, but I do remember he was very much part of the media pack on the South Coast. And Glenn, he was quite a player, just as you were kind of getting into football at the Dell.
Yeah, I know this is another. I get asked these questions whenever it's an old person required to talk about it. But fair play. I've said I wrote a blog about it during the week. I feel sort of a lot of getting old isn't great, but or being older isn't great. But it was nice to be around in the early '80s, watching the team that Saints had around that time, and then David Armstrong was a massive part of that. We kind of had 2 sort of great teams of that era. There was the 1981 team when he first joined, which was Kevin Keegan, Mick Shannon, Alan Ball, which was an incredibly entertaining team with basically, we're going to score 1 more than you. That was it. And 4-3 home wins quite regularly, stuff like that. And the team that came second in the league and FA Cup semi-final, which is 3 years later, by which time Ball, Shannon and Keegan had all gone and been replaced by the likes of Peter Shilton, Frank Worthington, Steve Williams had properly come through, Steve Moran. And Armstrong was a massive part of both sides. He gave a natural balance on the left-hand side. He would chip. I mean, I've got his goal record here, 16, 8, 15, 10, 10 in 5 consecutive seasons from midfield. And he wasn't like a Frank Lampard type who was always on the edge of the penalty area. He did a lot of work supporting the left back as well. And his last season with us, when he was sort of hampered by injury a bit, he played a lot of games at left back as well. So he obviously knew how to defend, but he just had this knack of arriving and scoring goals. And he was a great player. Set up loads of goals as well. And in the context of both of those teams, he was quite understated. You know, he wasn't the biggest star in either of those teams, but I think it's quite telling that he in the team that came second, he won Player of the Year that year. So So it's a sad day whenever people that you sort of grew up watching, reach the end like that. And yeah, it's just he's kind of synonymous for me of a time when sort of football was better, finances hadn't ruined it, kits were better, grounds were better, everything.
It was just more fun, wasn't it?
It was more fun. That's maybe nostalgia.
Some
Speaking
wonderful tributes paid to David Armstrong. I've read and seen a few of those this week. So thank you for that, Glenn. Yesterday, a battling performance, but the game ended with a 1-0 win for Manchester United. Steve, let's come to you first on this one. On balance, did we deserve a point out of that game?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think. I mean, United would have complained if we'd snatched a point, because that's what they do. But no, I think we were well worth something. But unfortunately, the difference was one individual moment of quality with the finishing from Bruno Fernandes, where, I mean, let's be honest, he's done nothing in the game. But we've left him unmarked on the edge of the area, and I mean, credit to him, it's a great finish for the goal. But apart from that, I thought we were excellent. Created chances, caused them plenty of problems, and it was just that final little finish, I think, that that just wasn't quite there for us yesterday. But again, plenty of promising sort of positive things to come from the game. I mean, Lavia again was outstanding in the centre of midfield. Bella-Kotchap at the back. Couple of brilliant sort of late interceptions that were basically going to prevent a goal. And yeah, I mean, I think we were, to be honest, we were solid throughout. I don't think there's anybody you could say that kind of even had a mediocre game. Even the players that were taken off fairly early in the second half, like El Yunusi, for example, he was pretty good first half, I thought. Tailed off a little bit after the break, but then Stu Armstrong comes on and basically picks up where he left off. So no, we were pretty good, I thought. And yeah, just one of those things where finish doesn't quite come off. I mean, De Gea unfortunately has only had one real save to make. And that was a header that was basically straight at him from Aribo. I mean, I think literally a foot either side, and I don't think he saves it at the pace it comes at him. So that's unfortunate, but I mean, at the end of the day, we've not beaten them at home for. I mean, was it 2003 the last time
It's a long time. Yeah.
Last time we beat them at home, and it's just one of those opponents who we just seem to have a problem with. It's annoying, particularly given the sort of arrogance from their fans, even though they're in absolute shambles at the moment as a football club, and they have been for best part of a decade. Which, for those of us who kind of grew up as a sort of child of the 90s for the most part, where basically everybody at school was all the glory hunters were Man United fans, to see them sort of on Facebook sort of airing their woes for the last couple of years has been absolutely glorious.
It's been a joy, hasn't it? It's been an absolute joy. Jacob, you've watched the game twice now, I think. Was it just lacking something going forward? Is that where we missed out yesterday?
Yeah, I think so. It's exactly what everyone really knows anyway. But what I did enjoy, like the guys have said, I liked how solid they were and how much they were so well drilled in the shape, considering the whole pre-season was spent in a different formation, different way of playing, and he's just thrown it all to one side and said, we're going to go back to the back four, but we're not going to play the same as we did last year, but similar. So I quite enjoyed that. I thought the three new signings, in particular, were really good. I thought Aribo, especially in that first half, caused Malacia all sorts of problems. Lavia, again, I just think he's fantastic. And I saw against Spurs, I thought how good he was in possession. But every single time I see him, there's more that he adds to his game. And Jadon Sancho just put something on his Instagram about an hour ago saying what a top player Lavia is. So I think that's certainly encouragement for the future. And Bella-Kotchap, I just done a piece on him. I think he embodied it, because he is raw. He's very similar to Salisu in his characteristics, but he was so composed. And I think that just went spread throughout the team. They all knew their jobs. And like you said, I can't really remember Man United really carving through him at any point. And I think that's a lot of encouragement for those that want to stick with a back four, because it shows Arsenal that actually some of these guys can defend 1v1 and they are, defensively solid. So I think there's a lot of encouragement. And, like you say, I think there does need to be that little bit more telling quality going forward. But everyone knew that anyway.
Let's get on to the penalty that wasn't a penalty, Glenn, because I know that we can probably spend about an hour discussing this.
Yeah.
Mark says, I'd be interested to know your thoughts on the penalty shout. I heard one pundit say that it shouldn't have been a penalty because McTominay wasn't looking at the ball. Since when's that been a rule? And also, the ball came in 30 yards. He had plenty of opportunities to watch it, but he was too busy grappling with Adams. So, what was your take on that? And we're not really any further clearer with the rules, it seems.
If I'm being charitable to McTominay, he's like, as you said, he's grappling with Adams. Adams has chested it down. He hasn't meant to handball it, but at the end of the day, it's hit his hand. Adams was trying to chest it down to himself, and McTominay's taken the next touch with a sort of swinging hand, and then it's hit his other hand, and it's mad. I mean, Andy Madley didn't give it straight away. Instantly he waved it away, and you assume that VAR had a look at it and decided that because he touched it twice, it was juggling, and there's no rule against juggling. There is a rule against handball is a rule, but juggling is not a rule. So that's probably why he got away with it. I don't know. It's mad. I thought it was interesting on Match of the Day that they highlighted one that got given against Villa last week, where it was a header from close range that hit someone on the hand, and they gave it a penalty, and they apparently PGMOL said that shouldn't have been a penalty. So they were implying on Match of the Day that probably counted against us. But it's the old consistency thing again, isn't it? So great. Have we missed out because they gave one to someone else last week that was vaguely similar? I don't understand how it's not a penalty, having seen it, 3 or 4 times. It just seems ridiculous. But are we surprised? No. And Ralph's reaction was much the same as mine. I think he said, well, he's hit it 3 times, but apparently that's not a penalty. What can you do? He just probably wanted to keep his 20 grand in his pocket rather than having to pay it out for what would be a perfectly reasonable complaint. Would it have been given at the other end? Probably. Would it have been given at Old Trafford if the roles were completely reversed? Almost certainly. You want to get annoyed about it, but there's not a lot of point. It's just one of those things you've got to suck it up. There'll be another one next week for someone else that will get given. The rules seem to change every week, and no one knows what the rules are anymore with handball.
It does seem that. Vanessa says it was a bonus of seeing some NBA skills from McTominay yesterday. Steve, are we lacking a bit of experience in terms of getting in the ref's ear, do you think? Is that one of the things you get when you've got younger players like we have? I remember when we were playing behind closed doors during COVID, and you could hear Jack Stevens in the referee's ear from sort of start to finish. Do you think we're missing that bit of experience at the moment, or is that irrelevant because they've checked it and we're just never going to get those kind of decisions?
I guess there's something to that. I think when you've got experienced players who have seen it all, they know which buttons to push with certain referees. Kevin Nolan was an absolute expert at this back through his career at Bolton and West Ham and whoever else he played for, I can't remember. And yeah, just certain players just constantly chirping in the referee's ear. But if you do it in a certain way that kind of gets you on side with the ref in terms of sort of being sort of friendly with them to an extent, but then when the big decision comes, hopefully you're going to get that 50-50 called in your favor. But I'm not sure that would have really necessarily helped us in this situation, because there weren't any players anywhere near the referee at the time. So it's not one of those where, like if Prowse, for example, is kind of that senior player, if he's still 30 yards away from the referee, he's not sort of in his ear saying, "Come on, ref, that's clearly got to go our way."
Che Adams went full Braveheart on him, didn't he? He sort of like sprinted from the incident straight to Andy Madley, and the game was going on, and the ball happened to drop to him whilst he was.
It was interesting. The ball didn't actually then go out of play for about 2 minutes, I think. So while it was all going on, it was like, well, I mean, are we still going to have a check at the point that it does eventually go out? But obviously they were obviously looking at it at the time. But I mean, the talk about sort of seeing NBA skills. I mean, I'm pretty sure that would be deemed travelling, wouldn't it?
Traveling, yes. Moving with the ball. Yeah, not good. Glenn, I just want to talk about the defensive unit as a whole yesterday, because Ralph was talking about how we seem more comfortable with a back four, and it feels like he knows now his centre-back pairing, and he probably wasn't sure going into the season, but they must have impressed you yesterday, because I thought they did brilliantly well.
Well, I think I said back at the start of the season, that he probably, in his mind, wanted to play Bella-Kotchap and Salisu, but didn't trust them to form a pairing. It's a natural right foot, left foot pairing. On the face of it, they're two athletes. They're both raw. Obviously, they're both relatively young. It was almost like, I think it's been well documented that he didn't trust that, so that's why he put the third defender in there. Almost by accident against Leeds, he kind of threw that back four together, and it's like a switch has been flicked with certain players. Also being able to trust Musa as an out and out left back. I mean, there was a couple of naive bits of defending yesterday where he kind of went running out to, I think, Dallo, is it, the right back, and he got done a couple of times simply because Dallo almost waited for him and then nicked the ball round him, and that set up a chance in the first half. So, it's not going to be perfect, but I think those four players, they really have stepped up. And it's the same thing when you watch the England national team. You want to see a back four because it enables you to get more of your sort of more attacking players on the pitch, and it certainly seems to work for us. Giving us benefits further up the pitch, enabling us to press more. So, I'd be quite happy for that. You would think that Perot will come back in when he's fully fit. But at the moment, I don't see any reason whatsoever that we should revert to a back three. Maybe if he decides to do it against someone like Arsenal, who he's done it before. But certainly for a normal game against an opposition that we can compete with, I definitely don't see any reason at all to change it. And if you want another slap in the Daily Mail's face, is the way those lads defended in that instant in the first half, where you got
just throwing themselves at it.
Carl Walker-Peters nearly got his head kicked off in that, and then Bella-Kotchap throwing himself at the ball, and the expected save from Bazunu at the near post. All that sort of stuff is, these are boys who want to defend. They don't want to be passive, which is my criticism at the start of the season. They want to they want to throw themselves in front of the ball. They want to affect the strikers. They want to make it difficult for them to score goals. Keep it going.
Sonny says, evening guys, shame about the result, but feeling positive, especially with Bella-Kotchap. I know, Jacob, you talked a little bit about some of the players, but he was one in particular I thought could be decent in both boxes. Exactly.
I thought his marauding runs were just a part of a byproduct of being in the back three, but it seems like he's actually doing it now, even in a partner in Salisu. So I think that's really pleasing. If he can just slightly keep down his shots sometimes and just be a little bit, just calm down, he might be getting a nosebleed in that final third, but I think he will score. It's a bit like Joel Matip at Liverpool. I think it's really quite useful when a team like Man United are just parking the bus in the last 15 minutes. You have a centre back that can drive forward and commit players towards the ball and try and disrupt an opposition low block. I think that could be quite useful, and I just hope sooner rather than later one of those shots doesn't find top of the northern and actually goes in. But for 20 years old, I think the way he's adapted and come in, he's looked really, really solid, and I thought he would dive in a lot more. His decision making in terms of when to stand up and when to go to ground is really good, because I remember Wesley Hoyt when he first came, and he just slide tackled for fun, didn't he? So I think there's a lot of positive signs with Bella-Kotchap. Quite a level head. Stop chuckling, Steve. Early days, Steve, but 21 million for Lavia and Bella-Kotchap is looking like a decent bit of business.
Yeah, I mean, when do those release clauses kick in?
Let's enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, and I think that's one of the key things with this transfer strategy is that realistically, if those players do turn out to be as good as we think they are, they're probably not going to be around. We're probably not going to see the benefit of them for that long. But of course, we'll reap the financial rewards for it, and then be able to hopefully progress on to the kind of sort of next stage of it. But yeah, both of those have looked sort of absolutely at home from a very early stage, which I think we all probably expected it maybe to take up until the season break for the World Cup, for some of these players to be fully sort of up to speed and looking like a sort of key part of this team. But I mean, what are we, we're 4 games in now, and I think you more or less, I mean, you could almost sort of ink in probably 7 or 8 of that starting lineup now.
It's if you think back to Livramento when he came in last year and the way he hit the ground running, you kind of wanted him to be like that, but at the same time, that doesn't happen very often. But it seems like we've got the recruitment absolutely right so far, and some incredible additions that have hit the ground running. So it's really good to see.
You also, just a slight caveat to that, you also have to remember that Tino was running out of gas a little bit before he got injured. And if you look at like Salisu last season, first 10 games, he was great. And, so this is the sort of thing that can happen with young players. Yes, they've made a very good start, but, a word of caution, because that, it may tail off at some point. I mean, maybe the World Cup, assuming those players don't actually go to the World Cup,
could be a blessing in disguise, couldn't it?
Could be a bit of a blessing, so the young players can recharge a little bit before we get to the second half of the season.
The right thing at the right time. There was a decent win earlier in the week. Saints made 9 changes for the cup game and we won 3-0. Ralph described it as a beautiful evening, which I thought was interesting. Jacob, your first trip to Cambridge, was it a beautiful evening for you?
I think it certainly was. It was a very wholesome evening. I think afterwards, Ralph came out to speak to us. There's no press conference room. He just came out, just arm on the fence. He was eating a bit of cake. He had one hand on his hip. I think he just absolutely loved the evening. Everything about it was perfect. He gets a clean sheet. He got some fringe players playing. The youth players played. Ballard scored. The prodigy. It was just a really, really good, and something I really enjoyed, because sometimes you think these Carabao Cup ties, is Cambridge going to make it difficult? It's going to be quite a sticky up evening, and it was just really great. And I thought a lot of the players impressed. I thought Adam Armstrong was good. He started learning that left wing role, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why Ralph started him, to understand that. And the fact that him and Shay look like they're building a little bit more of a partnership, it should build and bear fruit in the future. So overall, lovely evening and a beautiful one, as Ralph says.
Lots of positives, Glenn. Was it the debutants really that stole the show? Is that the bigger picture?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's always nice when a kid plays his first game and scores. Everyone's been keeping track of Don Ballard, because you always do with goal scorers for the young, for the underage sides, and so it was it was going to be interesting to see whether at first team level, albeit against a League One side, does he have something about him? And he looked absolutely fearless from what I saw. So it's great for him to get a goal. I was impressed with the lad at right back as well, Lewis Payne. I thought he did pretty well, albeit not really tested defensively. And it was a nice evening. I mean, adding to the wholesome element of it, did you see the interview with the Cambridge manager? He couldn't have been nicer if he tried.
Mark says the Cambridge fans were very receptive and appreciative of the good moments. No, I didn't see it. Was he just like in awe?
It was almost cringeworthy. It was so. I mean, fair play to him. I mean, I'll follow him now because of that and keep an eye on him. I hope he does well. But he was very much about how they could learn from us, and that was even though they got beaten quite comfortably, they've got to take the lessons from it and all that sort of stuff. He's very, very positive about the professionalism we showed, even with a fringe team, if you like. But yeah, it was a perfect day, wasn't it? A clean sheet, comfortable 3-0 win. Another couple of goals for Che Adams, which is no matter who they're against, goal scorers, it doesn't matter. 4 goals in game and a half or whatever it is for Che, and I thought he took that into the Manchester United game. I thought he played really, really well, and he I mean, I wasn't so enamored with the support players around him, but I thought he took his good form into that game, and he certainly seems more willing to shoot now, and that comes from just the buzz of hitting the net, regardless of who you're playing against. So overall, overall great game, and we got a good draw in the next round. So happy
And
days.
a potential banana skin in years gone by, Steve. I don't know about you, but I just felt quite confident about this one. I thought, it's going to be all right. But in years gone by, that second round of the cup is where we tend to trip up. So it was a good performance and a good result.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was only one real sort of big shock, wasn't there? Fulham going out to Crawley, and I think that's kind of just the way that competition is going now. The Premier League clubs have got such strength in depth in comparison to sides lower down. And at the end of the day, even teams like Cambridge kind of don't really see it as a priority. There's no money to be made from the competition other than from gate receipts. And when their ground holds, about 8,000 or so, I think, there's not a huge amount of money in it for them. So all they're kind of risking is their players getting injured when they've got a 46-game league campaign to play. So I think even they made a handful of changes for the game on Tuesday as well. So that kind of showed sort of where their priorities lie. But I mean they were organised, they were okay, but they understandably they didn't particularly test us. But I thought, from our perspective, it's one of those. If you've got the right attitude, and even if you're a second string team at our level, playing against a team in League One, you should still have comfortably enough, and kind of so it proved. We were just it was one of those. You could see the attitude was right. Let's get this done. And actually, in the first half, probably the only thing I could be critical about was that we kind of overplayed a little bit in the first half. There were quite a few moments where we got into good positions, sort of around the edge of the area, and either someone tried to play that sort of Hollywood through ball for somebody, and it didn't either overhit it or it got intercepted. Or we took too long to get a shot away. There were a couple of ropey finishes as well. I think Diallo shanked one. Couple cleared off the line as well. Not quite sure how the guy managed to backheel that one from El Yunusi, I think it was. But yeah, I mean, I guess the only criticism is it wasn't another sort of Newport really. But that's kind of picking at bones really a little bit.
What was the bigger story this week, Jacob? What was the bigger headline? Was it the lads that came in, like Don Ballard, Diamond Edwards as well, wasn't it? Lewis Payne? Or was it the fact that Jack Stevens, Nathan Redmond, Theo Walcott not involved, and people starting to question about their futures?
I think it's certainly the second one, Martin. I think it's Ralph's way of saying you've got to go now. I think it's quite a clear indication if he wanted to sell these players June, July, and not being involved in a game you would typically expect them to be in, I think just showed you that they need to move on, and hopefully there can be a resolution in next week. Otherwise, it leaves some of these in a potentially difficult position. And whether there was injuries on some parts, who knows? But I think Ralph made it clear in the press afterwards by saying that these guys are behind the young lads now, and Don Ballard is the guy that they're going to invest their time and effort in, rather than Nathan Redmond, who's been here for God knows how long, 5-6 years, and been was once a Ralph favourite. And the fact he's now getting phased out like Jack Stevens, even if when Jan Bednarek leaves as well, it's quite a significant thing as well.
And I guess you're going to agree, Glenn, in that we talked a lot last year about sort of loyalty and players on the bench where actually we knew they were going, or they shouldn't have been kicking around really. It looks like that's a bit of a change in Ralph's thinking this year. He's been pretty clear with the fact that they're not going to be involved.
Well, I think the timing of the game is significant as well. I think maybe if the transfer window had already shut, I think those three players may well have been involved, but there's nothing really to be gained by picking players who you might be selling in a game like that at this time, 1 week before the transfer window closes. But I definitely think we need to, one centre half needs to go. Yeah. I don't think we can sell both. So if both Stevens and Bednarek left, all of a sudden that leaves us a bit short, unless he's got confidence in Simeu to step up, which doesn't appear to have had so far. So it will be very interesting to see what happens in the next 3 or 4 days or whatever it is. But no, I think we can safely assume that a couple of those who weren't playing will be on the way.
It's going to be a busy week because the transfer window closes. A couple of games as well. Chelsea on Tuesday night. This is the 7:45 kickoff. Steve, one of the games to forget from last season, really. Bit of a heavy defeat. What are you expecting on Tuesday? Hopefully not another 6-0.
Well, no, I'd hope not. I mean, certainly given Chelsea's performances have been a little bit iffy. I mean, they were very good ironically very good against Spurs in the game they didn't win. But the games they have won, I mean, I've seen that, saw the Everton game, and I've seen kind of highlights from yesterday against Leicester, and they've been a little bit ropey. You kind of look at Chelsea, you just think there's something not quite right there. But I'm not sure anybody's able to quite put their finger on exactly what it is. I mean, Tuchel's system seems to have a complete sort of aversion to any concept of a centre forward, which can work in certain games. But I think there are a lot of games, I mean, particularly against the weaker sides in the division, where you just need a good number 9 who's gonna put the ball in the back of the net when you create plenty of chances for them. And they've got rid of both Lukaku and Werner, which, I mean, for us is great because both of them absolutely love playing against us.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're a bit of a conundrum, Chelsea, at the moment. And I mean that while they should still be there or thereabouts in the league, I do wonder whether they may have slipped behind certainly Spurs and maybe even Arsenal at this stage.
That's going to hurt them, isn't it?
Yeah, massively.
Glenn, what are you expecting from Tuesday? What have you made of Chelsea's start to the season?
Much the same as Steve's. That's what Steve said. They've been very, very strange. He seems to be trying to shoehorn players in where you wouldn't necessarily expect them to be. Reece James is, in my opinion, the best right wing back in the country, and they want to
careful. The Scousers will be after you.
I don't care. They play him at right centre back, and they play Ruben Loftus-Cheek over there, and that's not. You wouldn't have thought that was his game. I know Conor Gallagher he's not going to play, I assume, because he got sent off the other day, but you know, he's not the sort of player that would normally get a game in Chelsea's midfield. It's been much stronger in recent years, and as Steve said, the issues up front. Havertz looked a very good player at the end of last season, but he hasn't been firing so far this season. Sterling can be brilliant. He can also be awful. So I don't really know what to expect from Chelsea. One thing we can expect: Mason Mount will play well, despite not playing well against anybody else. He always plays well against us.
No,
but yeah. So again, I'd like us to go into this game believing we can win it, and hopefully not scarred by the 6-0 defeat last year was atrocious. I mean, we did nothing that game. We just turned up and got hammered. That was the game where Werner hit the post twice in a minute, and Ralph didn't change anything until we were 4-0 down or something like that.
Yeah, 4-0 down at half time, weren't we? I think
awful game. So we haven't got a lot to beat in that regard. Not get beat 6-0, but yeah, I mean, a couple of new players, haven't they? That the fullback from Brighton, and they seem to, and Koulibaly, who seems to be I think he's injured now. So the Fofana, I don't think will be with them in time for the game against us. So so I don't really know what to expect from Chelsea, but again, it's another one of the big clubs, and so they're going to be decent. It's not going to be
won't be easy.
It's not going to be an easy game for us, that's for sure.
And Jacob, it's a quick turnaround these Tuesday night games. So do you think we stick with the same team? Is he's not going to want to change that team that seems to be performing and just starting to click and purr a bit?
I think he should, especially this early on in the season. That they're getting used to the system quicker than I thought they would, especially if they had no preparation pre-season with it. But that's an entirely different point altogether. So I just think they need to go with it, keep with the same rhythm. I do want to see more from Alioune. I've thought this for a while. He strikes me as a nice footballer. Like after games, you leave it, you think he's done all right. But there's so many times where he gets himself into good positions and he lets himself down with that final ball. He's not a killer. I want him to be one of those number 10s that are just a killer and they can produce things. So there's one moment in the last game where Che did superbly well to back off Martinez, and he wanted Elyounoussi closer to him, and he wasn't there. I just feel the Saints need a little bit more from the number 10, the right wing, wherever you think he plays.
Agree.
So
but he did play that absolutely ridiculous through ball for Adams yesterday, where obviously Adams then kind of fell over himself and shanked the shot. But I mean, quite how he threaded it through that gap, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, so you can see the talents there. It's consistency. But then part of that's kind of why he's playing for us and not someone better.
Exactly.
I
There
always
needs to
think
be
with him-
ruthlessness.
Yeah, I always think with him it's his pace that lets him down. And it's not just the sprint speed; it's the speed he does things. He makes himself a space sometimes, and then just whatever action he's about to do next, be it the pass or dribble somewhere or whatever, just never seems to do it quite quickly enough.
Is that where we're back to? And I'm just thinking back to some of the debates and discussions that we had last season, aside from the goalkeeping one, which I think we've now finally solved. The other one we had every week seemed to be about the number 10s, and we were just lacking the quality there. So is that then, Glenn, just what we haven't addressed and what we need to do before Wednesday?
I think so. Yeah, I think with Che Adams sort of showing the form that he's in, if I had to choose between signing a number 10 and the centre forward, I'd probably go for a number 10. But it's a toss of a coin, really, isn't it? Sekou Mara looks promising. Could he play, for example, the role that Elyounoussi played? Would that give us more of an attacking threat? I don't really know with him whether he's more suited to being a sort of wide striker, or is he an up the middle centre forward type? So I don't know. I mean, I felt yesterday that it was the number 10s, if you like, the three of them, Elyounoussi, Adam Armstrong, and Aribo. They all had good moments, but I did feel that they weren't quite at the same level as the rest of the team. And when the substitution board went up straight away, even before I saw the number, I knew it was Elyounoussi going to go off, because I felt like he'd certainly since half time he'd really sort of like gone. So there's still no one really putting their hand up to say, this is my position and I'm going to keep it for the rest of the season. Whereas elsewhere in the team, we've Bella-Kotchap has come in and gone, yeah, I'm the man. Lavi has come in, I'm the man.
Yeah,
those number 10 positions there. I mean, Steve said 8 out of the 11 positions have more or less sort of like cemented them. Yeah, for me, it's more or less those three behind the striker that are still up for grabs.
We're still waiting. Well, Jacob, you were the only one to correctly predict a defeat, so you got yourself 1 point, because we'll gloss over Steve's 3-0 to Saints, which on the Monday night was soon dismissed, I think, by the rest of us. So, Jacob, you get the honour of going first for predicting the Chelsea score. So, how do you see this one playing out?
I'm going to go for a 1-1. I think Slam's going to start off really bright. I just feel perhaps towards the end, Chelsea's strength and depth, their 5 subs off the bench could just ground out Slamton. But yeah, a positive draw, I'd say.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I was going to say exactly the same. So I'll stick with 1-1 as well.
Stick with the 1-1. Glenn, you going for for the record, I don't think we're going to get much. I think we might lose 2-0. Glenn, what are your thoughts?
You miserable bunch of people.
You going for the home win?
Oh, I don't know. That's a bit silly, isn't it? Yeah, go on then.
Welcome
Go
to my
on
world.
then. Let's have a little 2-1 win.
A cheeky 2-1 win. All right. Okay. Nice. Wolves is the game after that. That's on Saturday, 3:00 kickoff at Molineux. Another one we lost last season, Steve, but it did give us the greatest goal. We had that James Ward-Prowse free kick, which I've seen on repeat again this week. People have been sharing that. Wolves have had an indifferent start, haven't they? This could be a slightly different game on Saturday.
Yeah, and all of a sudden there seem to be loads of issues there in the background. I mean, I see Willie Bolly, one of their centre halves, was supposed to be on the bench today against Newcastle, and basically just didn't show up. So I mean, God knows what the hell's going on.
They're not recording the new Amazon documentary, are they? It's not.
No idea. Maybe you just objected to having to play against the Khashoggis, as we're now legally obliged to call them. But it's they've obviously spent a lot of money again on Portuguese players, which definitely nothing dubious through that agency whatsoever.
No.
But they look a bit weird. I mean, they've got no centre forward at the moment of any repute. Raul Jimenez is not the player he was pre head injury. Obviously, apart from that game where we made him look brilliant again last season. But they look like they've got a bit more energy about them based on today's performance compared to their sort of first game of the season. But I thought against Spurs last week they looked quite good, but just had nothing up front at all. Which, if that's the case, then if that's the case this week, I mean, you would imagine they're probably going to try and get someone in before the window shuts, because I mean they're just not going to score any goals if they stick with what they've got. If they're still that sort of relatively sort of impotent, then I think we've got every chance. But it's not a ground we've traditionally done that well at. So yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. It's a place where we can go and get a positive result, though. Certainly this season, you feel, Glenn?
Yeah, it always. I think that every year when we go there or when we play them at home, and it annoys the living hell out of me that we never beat them. It really does, because they never seem to have much about them. You know, they play usually really boring football. They've got a couple of good players who are still the good players, like Neto on the wing and Neves in the centre of midfield. They're still the main men. As Steve said, Jimenez is not the same player, which is sad for him, because it's horrible the way it came about. They have some players who I just think, like Semedo at right back is dreadful, and he was getting ripped apart today as well. You know, we just got to put some pressure on him. And you know, one of the likable things about them was Connor Cody, who's now gone. So to me, they're a team without much identity, other than mirroring their manager, who's from the Claude Puel school of not being particularly exciting, isn't he?
There's a name I didn't think we'd hear for a while.
Well, yeah, I just thought I'd drop it in from time to time to remember.
We've already had Wesley Hoot mentioned tonight.
Yeah, I know. So I don't like them, as Steve alluded to. I find some of their transfer fees that they pay and receive somewhat questionable. It's a strange setup going on there with the agency. So I do hope that we go out there and give them a turning over. But I've thought that many times over the last 3 years, or however long they've been in the Premier League, and it's I don't think it's happened yet. Have we beaten them at all?
Beat them at home.
We beat them in the Championship. Was it the Championship, that one when we scored 6 goals?
6. Was it Saganowski? Was he?
Yeah,
no, I'm talking since they come up to the Premier League.
No, we won in the FA Cup, didn't we?
Oh yeah, we won 2-0
behind closed doors.
But Jacob, these are the sort of games that we're going to look at and go, well, we need to be winning these, don't we? Really, you know, you lose at home to Manchester United, and that's fair enough. Maybe get a negative result against Chelsea, but certainly Wolves is one that we need to be picking up some points. Yeah,
definitely. I think Wolves, they're in a state of uncertainty as well, because they've changed system this year, which I think could play into Southampton's hands, because I used to get sick to death of their wing backs, especially the way Southampton play with such a narrow system. The boys kept getting switched to the wing backs all the time, and they would have so much time on the ball because they would be the free men. So the fact they're playing a back four could help Southampton. And there's a lot that they still need to adjust. And, they need to integrate these new signings. £45 million for a Portuguese player, and they need to adjust to the system as well. And it shows. And at the moment, it's looking like they are. But as you guys say, they haven't got that clinical striker. So there's a lot of similarities between Southampton and Wolves at the moment. And I think if Southampton can really get on that front foot, can be nice and positive, then they can take the game to Wolves.
Okay, let's get some score predictions from you, Steve.
I think I'll repeat the Chelsea 1-1-1. I think I just don't see us winning up there. It's just one of those places that no matter how well we play, they'll scramble something.
Cool. It's going to be a miserable podcast next week, and we just get 2 points this week. Glenn,
I'd take 2 points from those games. To be honest, be all right.
Well, as I've gone for the silly score against Chelsea, I better go for a realistic one here. I'll go for a 2-2 draw.
2-2. Do you know what I thought?
Actually, no, cancel that. I'll go 0-0. 0-0 draw.
All right. Okay. Well, I've gone for the 2-2. So, and Jacob, it's a long journey for you. What do you reckon?
I'm going to go 1-0 Southampton. I think I'm going to give you the goal score as well. I think Shea Adams is going to nick it at the death.
Oh, all right. I don't know if you get any bonus points for.
I'm trying,
but we shall see. I've made a note of it anyway. And
put a bet on.
And we should say, yeah, get your money on. Any other business today, obviously, is going to be about transfers. Lots of rumours flying around. Jacob, you're the guy with the ear to the ground on this. Deadline day is Wednesday, I think. So there's a chance by the time you're listening to this, then we may have signed a few. There may have been a few go out. You're expecting a busy 24, 48 hours, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think we did a piece a couple of weeks ago on about the amount of players that could be sold, and it's virtually nearly everyone that has a, everyone has a price really. So it'll be interesting to see the players that will go out. We've mentioned Stevens, Redmond, Walcott. What happens with Alex McCarthy's situation? James Garnett, if he potentially comes in, could Romeo, could Ibrahima Diallo go out? So there's so many moving parts, and it's funny because I see all these links on Instagram, on Twitter. Gonzalo Ramos seems to be the one that everyone seems to love, and I've had about 50, 60 DMs about him, and it just seems like these transfer rumors just get a life of its own because it just snowballs on social media. But it's been really fun, and I'm looking forward to it. I think a fullback has to be a priority. I know Musa Janepa's done well, but they do need one. I think a midfielder could be James Garnett if one of them goes, and a striker, of course, whoever that will be. We'll see, I think, in the early part of next week. So it's going to be a really interesting part. And I've never known a window, correct me if I'm wrong, where there's so many uncertainties coming in and out. So really exciting, and hopefully something one of the ones that Sky Sports station a journalist outside their training ground for.
Do they still do that after the old?
Not after the dildo in the ear at Stoke.
They go to a private area, don't they? I think they're allowed into the club, so there's no fans around.
I mean, I wasn't going to mention it, Steve, but since you did, the other rumours this week, of course, Maitland-Niles potentially from Arsenal. Would that be a good one, Glenn? Is there anybody that jumps out for you?
Maitland-Niles, there's been stories over the years about his attitude not being the best, and I don't, I kind of hope we've moved away from that. We've bought the wrong player ourselves a couple of times. I'm thinking Mr. Lamina, who just thought he was better than he was. Maitland-Niles, it wouldn't surprise me if it's the agent putting it around because we were linked with him before he went on loan to West Brom. He was back then. He was very particular about where he wanted to play, and he didn't want to play fullback. And if we got him in, then he'd be, what would he be? Third choice central midfield. He's not going to play if Ward-Prowse and Lavia are fit. He'd be a backup fullback. So I don't see that one happening unless he's had a major change of attitude to the whole thing. So on the face of it, it'd be decent, but I think there's many reasons why that one won't happen.
And Steve, there's plenty of players that I think you would personally drive to new clubs, but Romeo is probably not one of them. That's been a strong rumour this week that Oriol Romeo might be off. It'd be sad to see him go if he does.
It would, but also it would be one of those situations where I think everyone kind of accepts that he's now not first choice. And kind of the back end of last season kind of probably pointed to a lot of the reasons why, in that it looked as if his legs were kind of going a little bit. I mean, I still think he's probably the best player that we've got at the club in terms of if you pass the ball to him with 3 or 4 players around him, he's probably still the one that I would trust the most to be able to then pick the pass, take the ball into his feet and find a teammate with it. But I think time catches up with all of us, and especially so in when you're a sort of finely tuned athlete at the top of his game. And I think ultimately, if he was offered, say, I've heard talk that he's been offered a 3-year deal at Girona, which is basically home.
Yeah. You're not going to begrudge him that, are you?
Yeah, I think if if that opportunity came along and he wanted to take it and he wanted to go and play regular first team football, I'd be disappointed if the club stood in his way.
Yeah,
on that one.
Yeah. Well, it's not only the men's team that managed a decent comeback of late. The women's team were 2-0 down with 30 minutes to go today in their game and managed to rescue a point. I think Laura Rafferty scoring the equaliser. So decent result for them today. Anyway, they're off the board in terms of points. we've got through again so much tonight. That's pretty much it for this week. Don't forget you can follow the Total Saints podcast on Facebook and Twitter. We're at Total Saints Pod. The website is totalsaints.co.uk. That includes a link for our online shop, which is the Total Saints icons. You can also drop us an email via the website during the week if you like. Don't forget we're on Patreon, where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. That's Patreon/Total Saints Podcast. There are 4 different tiers ranging from £5 to £20 a month, each one with different benefits. Some of them include a shout at the end of the pod, including Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Matt Hall, who are in our Francis Benali tier. We've got Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Matt Rose, and Nick Reed in our Mick Shannon tier. Thanks to Steve, thanks to Glenn, thanks to Jacob. Have a great week, chaps. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your comments, and we'll see you again soon.